welcome. I'm Carol Gable, President of the Board for UU Utica. Whether you are visiting for the first time or have been a member for many years, you are welcome here. Whatever faith you have known, if any, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. We are invited to bring our whole selves to this worship service, our doubts as well as our convictions, the pain and joy we have known, our longing for connection and understanding. Every part of you is welcome here. If you are signing in or visiting today for the first time, we are glad you have joined us. We would love to learn more about you and connect with you with our newsletter if you like. If you are online, there is a link in the chat to a form that we hope any visitors would fill out. And if you are here, we have physical forms on that table. Just let anybody that you see here in the service know you could use one if you're new and would like to get information. Either way, we hope you will stay with us for informal conversation after the service. The only announcement today, I believe, is the climate action team scheduled to meet today. It's been rescheduled to next Sunday after service. And let us open our hearts and minds to the experience of community and the wisdom of love.
Toward a Place of Wholeness by Reverend Viola Abbott. We are Unitarian Universalists. When we lift up the 7 principles, some of us think of them as a kind of theology, but they are more important to our collective than that. They do not tell us what we should believe. They tell us how we should be. They tell us how we should act in the larger world and with each other. We are brought here today by the fact that Unitarian Universalism has fallen short of the image that was presented to the world and to many of those who embrace this religion. But we are also brought here today by the truth that Unitarian Universalism has shifted its course to move toward a place of wholeness, a place that perhaps never existed for us as a denomination. It has been a long and sometimes unforgiving road to today, but we are here today because we are mindful of the past and because we have hope for the future. We want this practice of faith to be a fulfilling manifestation of its promise. Open your hearts. Seek new ways of understanding. Come, let us worship together.
We kindle a flame of power, illuminating the holy in each of our faces. We recognize in the flame a passionate commitment to our shared faith. We are held and carried from day to day, week to week, in the shining of the light. This flame is mine as well as yours. We are brought together on this day, called to growth, to expansion within its glow. What does your heart know while beholding this holy flame? Now, we will sing together the hymn, Hush, a traditional piece from the African American experience of slavery. As you sing these words, you can reflect on the experiences of the people who would have sung this. So they will be both up on the screen, and if you are joining us in person, you have words on the back of your order of service as well, and you are invited to stand as you are willing and able to join in with the hymn.
Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Sounds like justice. Somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Soon, one morning, death come creeping into my room. Soon, one morning, death come creeping into my room. Soon, one morning, death come creeping into my room. Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? I'm so glad trouble don't last always. I'm so glad trouble don't last always. I'm so glad trouble don't last always. Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Hush, hush, somebody's calling my name. Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do? Oh my Lord, oh my Lord, what shall I do? What shall I do?
Welcome. I've been thinking about the eighth principle a lot since we decided as a church to vote on it in October. I see it as the first step, the very first step, the first baby step. We're going to need to be diving deep into practices and assumptions about our own beliefs, our own practices. And this is already happening. I've seen it happening around us. We need to be reaching out into the community beyond cash donations. We need to be developing sweat equity and rebuilding our community relations and being part of the BIPOC community, volunteering in places such as the Warming Center, the Morrow Center, and other places, that food pantries and other locations. We need to be discussing reparations. We may not have been directly involved in slavery, but all our ancestors were. Every single one of us benefits from the slavery. Recognition that our economy was built on the backs of enslaved peoples. And in addition, that our slaughter of indigenous peoples and the theft of their land is a result of the same attitude. It is very closely linked to the eighth principle, and that is only the beginning. Thank you.
right, so we have a story for all ages. Would invite up anyone of any age who wants to join us, but you all honestly look pretty comfortably seated. So me and Katie are here today. Katie, you stand a little closer to me so you can get in camera. I know, like I said, new things. Because we have this beautiful piece of ceramic to show you. I've been really excited about this for a while. Katie, you got our ceramic?
Oh, I got it, but I'm really sorry. Unfortunately, it broke on the way here this morning. And I'm really upset about it. Why don't we try to fix it? Can we?
But I didn't break it.
I know you didn't break it, but can you help me fix it anyway?
You mean help you fix it even though I didn't break it? I mean, I just need you to understand that I'm a good person and I don't go around breaking things.
It's important to me that we figure out how to fix this salt shaker because it means a lot to me.
All right, you're right. We should probably fix the salt shaker. Anybody out there got any ideas how we could, fix our salt shaker?
It's really pretty when it's old.
I mean, I guess we could tape it together. That might hold. Some good duct tape. Get some decent glue.
Yeah, I hear Gorilla Glue does wonders in situations like this.
That's true. Honestly, if we all chewed some gum, we could stick it together with gum.
Yeah, the old gum and duct tape solution.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, here's something, and I picked this up in Japan. I have an idea. It's called kintsugi.
What's kintsugi?
It's an old Japanese way of mending things like pottery and ceramics, lacquerware, where you use gold to mend it. And when you look at it afterwards, you can see all of the little lines of gold. And yes, it shows the imperfections, but it shows that it's been made whole again into something new and possibly even more beautiful.
Oh, so the point of this kintsugi is not to make it look like it did before or to hide the broken parts.
Exactly. The gold is used to remind whoever is using it over and over that something that was once broken is whole again, and that it has a different kind of beauty now.
So I suppose in a way that's what happens when other things break too, right?
What kind of things?
Like relationships, friendships. Sometimes we hurt each other's feelings and it's like the thread between some people breaks. But as Unitarian Universalists, we don't ignore that. We try to rebuild the relationship so that it's stronger than it was before.
Agreed. The work of healing is all of our jobs, no matter how big or small we are. And when we repair our mistakes with love and with our covenant, we remember that our relationships are more beautiful once we have acknowledged the hurt, asked for forgiveness, corrected our mistakes, and made a sacred promise to do better in the future.
So one of the things that we're going to keep talking about today during the service is about our healing of relationships with Black Unitarian Universalists and others in our community, so that our faith and our congregations will be more beautiful than they were before. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
On the table.
This reading is titled Coalescing Around Whiteness, and the words are by Takia Nur Amin. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God? Micah 6:8. When President Biden was inaugurated in January, most of my white friends thought everything would be okay. I thought different. There's going to be a dialing up of white supremacist violence coming forward, I warned one friend. We're going to see some more outrageous violent stuff. A white nationalist wearing body armor with a white nationalist symbol stands in front of a line of religious leaders, some wearing Side with Love garb at the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally in August 2017. I think all the time about the fact that we never properly discredited the Confederacy as a traitor government, and instead have followed the symbols and rhetoric of the Old South to flourish in violent and historically inappropriate ways. We live in a myth that white people are innocent and rational and logical. It's hard not to be paranoid as a Black person because you have white people who say, oh, I would never do that. I'm one of the good ones. And you want to believe them. But history shows that when it comes down to it, a lot of white people will coalesce around whiteness. For example, there are little offshoots of people who are protesting our Unitarian Universalist emphasis on racial justice. Well, that's just fine. Don't call yourself UU though. Go be something else. I'm not interested in keeping people that aren't trying to be kept. When you say it has to be a big tent, everybody has to be in here so we can hold hands and sing Kumbaya. What I hear is we want to make sure that the people who would take your life, who would snuff you out without consideration, get to be in here and hold hands and be affirmed. Do we who are UUs really believe in the values of our faith enough to enact them in the larger world in bold, clear, and unequivocal ways? Because I'm telling you, after the things we've experienced in the last year, politically and socially, people are looking for bold, clear, unequivocal pronouncements. If we're going to say that we are a faith that is committed to justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, then we have to do that. Powerful words. So, good morning. It is good to be together again and continuing our conversations about adopting the eighth principle. I have been reading and thinking, like Branwyn and many of you, about this principle and what it would mean for us. What does it call us to do and act upon so that it's meaningful to our community and to us? How can we live this principle, which calls us to dismantle racism and other oppression in ourselves and our institutions? These are pretty strong words, which I think require more than coming to church on Sunday morning, seeing friends, enjoying music, and feeling uplifted. Don't get me wrong, these are all wonderful things, but this eighth principle is a call for UUs and their congregation to do more. I think that putting a banner on our church stating that Black Lives Matter is an excellent start. So is attending an important museum exhibit about a Black artist whose work explores issues of racism and social justice. And so is reading and discussing books on white supremacy and the history of racism in our country. Having services focused on these issues, which call us to join efforts in dismantling racism within ourselves and our community as we are here today, is another important step on this journey. Holding a workshop for UUs and friends led by a longtime leader in the community on anti-racism is also a good action, one which our board is organizing for September 18th here. I think living in accordance with the eighth principle calls us to do all of these things and more. We need to continue to talk about racism, getting passionate, within and without and outside our congregation. And we need to do more than talk. What are some possible actions that we can take, both as individuals and as a congregation, to live the eighth principle? Well, an idea that immediately comes to mind for me is to engage more with the non-white population of Utica. The most recent census data shows that Utica's population is 15% Black, 11% Asian, 12% Hispanic. And yet when I look at us now, I see all white faces. And so I have pondered what sort of actions would help us engage more with the non-white population of Utica. Let me just share some ideas I've had these past months. Take a walk in F.T. Proctor Park, where you'll see people of all colors and ethnicities and hear several languages spoken. The trees, the fields, the newly renovated Lily Pond are all quite beautiful as well. Work in the community gardens of Utica. There are several. 2 are operated by For the Good, a nonprofit organization created by a woman of color in Utica 20 years ago. Volunteer and just attend celebrations hosted by non-white communities such as Juneteenth, the Mohawk Valley Latino Association Festival, August 29th, and more. These are frequently listed in our newsletters. Participate in Black Lives Matter vigils. Join the NAACP and become a partner organization. Invite people of color to join our services, both as speakers and as our guests. Shop and hire businesses owned by people of color. Support other religious communities doing social justice work, such as the Cornerstone Community Church, which is actively helping the homeless population. Sadly, a large part of the homeless population are people of color. Reverend Mike Baldwin, who leads that congregation's efforts and spoke at our UU service a year ago, recently found his tires slashed at the church, and it's assumed it's related to his advocacy to treat the homeless with dignity and love. Volunteer at the Refugee Welcome Center. Utica's refugee population has added so much vibrancy to this community. Support and engage with local candidates who advocate for racial justice, transparency in government, equal access to government services, healthcare, education, opportunity. Become a mentor for Utica's Young Scholar Program. These people are fabulous. I didn't come up with these ideas on my own. Many of them came to mind after conversations with you, because you are already doing these things. Many of you have social justice and action as a key component in your lives, which has drawn you to this UU faith. I believe the 8th principle adds focus to social justice efforts so that anti-racism becomes a key component. It also calls us to raise our level of consciousness and effort in dismantling systems and ideas that were created from a society founded on slavery and the destruction of indigenous populations. Yes, these events happened a long time ago, but their legacy lives on, and to truly create beloved community, we need to make this effort. We need to live the 8th principle, to stand on the side of love for all people. This is spiritual work that I believe is best done with others in order that we can support, challenge, question our beliefs and hopes in a supportive environment that calls us to do better, to do more. I hope we will take this journey to spiritual wholeness together and indeed build a truly beloved community, welcoming to all.
So this is a reading called Holy Interruption, and I hope I'm pronouncing their name right. Julieta Herman de la Fuente. And it starts with this quote from Paulo Freire from the book Pedagogy of the Oppressed. There's no such thing as neutral education. Education either functions as an instrument to bring about conformity or freedom. One of the most humbling lessons of my anti-racism education career was when I witnessed a difficult and racist presentation in a Unitarian Universalist gathering, and I didn't think it was mine to interrupt. In fact, there were over 40 people in the room, and nobody thought that it was theirs to interrupt. It was like witnessing a train wreck in slow motion. It was terrible, and no one said stop. When the speaker was finished, we all struggled to process what had just happened. No one said, we need a caucus for the people of color in the room, because there were 6 of us, to figure out what we need. There was stark silence, followed by tortured conversation. A person's hand in motion hovers over an emergency stop button. I learned that day that if I am in the room, it's my responsibility to interrupt when someone is being harmed and to center their or our needs. It doesn't matter what my hierarchical position is in the system. I'm part of a covenantal community, and when a covenant gets broken, it's my responsibility to name that break with kindness and the intention of healing, and to call us back into right relationship. To throw a wrench into the agenda is one of the more destabilizing things that we can do in majority white spaces. Because white supremacy culture teaches us to be efficient, to stay on task, to aim for perfection. The alternative is being relational. Instead of staying on task, we can pay attention to what just happened and what needs to be done in order to restore right relationship. We can center those who have been placed at the margins. This holy muscle of interruption is about courage, about commitment, to love at a higher level, about liberation and wholeness. It's about being willing to risk being unpopular in the moment and taking the heat that will happen when you interrupt the process. When something happens that requires interrupting, it's ours to do. And the more privilege we have according to our social location, the more responsibility we have to leverage that privilege. When we do, we bring beloved community into being. Thank you.
The proposed eighth principle states that we would covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. Last time I spoke about the eighth principle, I talked about building the diverse, multicultural, beloved community. Today, I want to get into the second part, the accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. So I'll begin by breaking it down a bit. So what does accountably mean? Well, in this context from the eighth principle page, this is what it says about accountability. It says, white UUs hold themselves accountable to communities of color to make sure whites do what they say they will do. In practice, that could mean having a people of color caucus within congregations, districts, etc., to discern and express needs and concerns to the rest of the community. Black UUs hold each other accountable and help each other see and dismantle signs of internalized racism. We need an effective mechanism or structure to ensure this, similarly with other oppressions. So the next word is dismantle. This means to take apart, so that word at least is fairly simple. And then racism and other oppressions, which is something that we could spend a lot of time taking apart, but for these purposes, I'll define racism as acts or systems that produce an inequitable or unequal position of power between those of different races. So oppression is really approximately the same definition, but for things beyond race. So still a inequitable position of power. So this tells us what to dismantle. And then finally, in ourselves and our institutions tells us where we are looking to do the work of dismantling. So if we support the eighth principle, we affirm and promote the taking apart of aspects of ourselves and the structures around us to find and remove inequities. And we need to listen to others to tell us what those inequities are. And this is where things get hard. One of the things that UUs hold most tightly to is our independence. We assert our independence as congregations and as individuals, and everybody is meant to have their own voice, and everybody's voice is meant to hold an equal place. Accountability, though, when talking about racism and oppression, asks us to keep our voices quiet if we're not in the oppressed groups. It asks us to listen more carefully to the voices of others, even when, and especially when, Those voices say things that are not our experiences and not what we see around us. It means that even if we think we can tell what might be best or what might be the way to help everyone, that's not actually our role here. And the reality of our world is that voices are not equal. Black voices are heard differently than white voices. Sometimes they are not listened to at all. Other times they seem unusually loud and possibly uncivil. But either way, they often don't get heard until we actually quiet down and make space for them. And even then, it can be very hard to hear things that seem to be counter to what you've thought for a long time. In fact, this is what part of what Black UUs have been saying for many years now about the Unitarian Universalist Church, the organizations, the systems. I actually found this from a UU World article written by Paul Razor in 2010. 2010, so that's before everything happened in 2016 that we talked about the last time. He notes, Unitarian Universalism has its own cultural tradition, one that is rooted in European American cultural norms and ways of being in the world. This normative lens is often invisible to those of us who look through it, but it is all too visible to those who view the world through a different cultural lens. Accountability says that we must decide not to trust our personal experiences of our culture, but that we agree to listen to how others experience it, that we will believe them, and then we will use that information to make changes. So that takes us to the second part of this that's hard, dismantling the systems that create these inequities. So one of the other things that UUs hold on to real tightly is that we are good people. In fact, both our Unitarian and Universalist traditions come out of the idea that neither group would have gone to hell, because for Universalists, God was too good to damn them, and Unitarians were too good to be damned. And that's a whole nother sermon. But since we're good people, it is often hard for us to believe that perhaps we and our institutions, our churches, could possibly be embedded with racism. But the reality of our world is that the majority of people and institutions contain implicit bias and racism, whether we want them to or not. And, as noted in the previous quote, it's often invisible to those of us who are part of the dominant lens. So I asked in the title of today's service, what would it mean to uphold and embrace the eighth principle? I think it would mean that we re-examine how we do some things, how committees work, how we are governed. It may mean we rethink our expectations of membership. It may mean we change some things that we do during our services. It may mean we reconsider our current priorities and where our dollars go. And it may mean that we give up a few things that we are used to having, but with the hope of gaining much, much more. We often talk about a lack of diversity in Unitarian Universalism and in our congregation in particular. But diversity is not just going to appear if we don't make the changes to create multicultural inclusion. If we choose to adopt the eighth principle, we are going to need to do the work. We're going to need to examine our system, our ways of interacting, our worship services, our priorities, and our expectations. And in this process, we are going to find out that we have inadvertently made mistakes, and we are going to be uncomfortable, and we are going to be wrong. However, we don't want to fall into the trap of feeling like we're bad people because of this. We can acknowledge that things don't work and we can change. We can acknowledge that things are going to be a little different and maybe a little uncomfortable and new, and we can change. We can be accountable, dismantle the systems that continue to uphold racism and oppression, and then we will have the space to build our beloved community. And as a very famous movie has told us, if you build it, they will come. We are going to sing together number 1008, when our heart is in a holy place. I like this one because I think this hymn reminds us that our holy place is not when we are alone listening to our own voices, but it's when we are with and listen to others. It's not just about our individual spirituality, but how to be spiritual in community. Let us sing together in community.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed and kind, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we tell our story from deep inside, and we listen with a loving mind, and we hear our voices in each other's words, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we share the silence of sacred space, and the God of our heart stirs within, and we feel the power in each other's faith, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place.
Let us open our hearts, still our minds, and enter a time of prayer. Let us call forth and hold in our hearts the stories of all who have come before us, the memories of those who are with us today, and the hope for tomorrow, and for all those who will come after us. Let us be thankful for this opportunity for healing, forgiveness, and reconciliation, while knowing that we can never, should never forget what has brought us here today. Let us be glad that voice has not only been given those whose sorrow and pain were their companions in this faith, but that stories told by these voices through our readings have been received with a goal of redemption and understanding. Let us call upon that light which shines in each of us to give us the strength to walk together into the future and do the work that is necessary and which does not end here today. Let us have the wisdom to lovingly have the conversations we need to have with each other, that we must have with each other, in order to grow this faith in radical love and inclusion. Amen, and blessed be. Now our work will take time and thought and conversation and change. It will also take resources, including your support through pledges and donations. And so now we will collect an offering to help sustain the church and our work. And if somebody out here wants to grab the 2 baskets I grabbed, hey, look, I got them. If you're online, you can always donate through our online link or by sending a
check the church.
We are here to be lifted in love. Look at the birds, they tell us. We are here to be lifted in love. Look at the trees, they tell us. We're here to be lifted in love, to listen to love as a flower raises its face to the sun. We are all one, here to be lifted in grace and love. We are here to be lifted in love. Look at the sky, it tells us. We are here to be lifted in love. Look at the trees, they tell us. We're here to be lifted in love, to listen to love as the children raise all their faces to the sun. We are all one, here to be lifted in grace and love. We are here to be lifted in love. Look at the trees, they tell us. We are here to be lifted in love. Look at the seas, they tell us. We're here to be lifted in love, to listen to love as the flower raises its face to the sun. We are all one, here to be lifted in grace and love.
And we'll extinguish our chalice with the words in the order of service and or on your screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again.
For the benediction, I am reading writing by Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt called This Essential Work of Justice and Liberation for All. By no means are we Unitarian Universalists perfect. We often fail as much as we succeed. Yet even when we have broken our vows 10,000 times or 1,000 times, we return to this essential work of justice and liberation for all. We do the work best when we remember what a church is and what a church is not. Church is not a place to hide. It is not a place to get away from the world. It is not a place where we pretend that the lives we live in our particular situations are not terribly complex, often confusing, and sometimes depressing. Church is the place where we stand with one another, look the world in the eye, attempt to see clearly, and gather strength to face what we see with courage, and yes, with joy.